It was a peaceful evening in the city of Lumora. The golden sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. Children laughed in the streets, shopkeepers packed away their goods, and lanterns flickered to life. Everything seemed perfect, until the ground began to tremble. Boom, boom, boom. The people of Lumora froze. Cups rattled on tables, windows shook, and a deep, rumbling sound echoed through the streets. It was as if a mountain had come to life and was walking toward them. Then, out of the mist beyond the city gates, a massive shadow appeared. It was a giant. His towering figure blocked the last rays of sunlight, casting a long, eerie shadow over the city square. His footsteps made the ground quake, and his breath was like a gust of wind. The people gasped in fear, hiding behind carts and doors. "Who dares enter Lumora?" called out the town's mayor, his voice trembling. The giant bent down, his enormous face now visible under the lantern light. His eyes were large but kind, filled with curiosity rather than anger. In a deep but gentle voice, he spoke. "I do not wish to harm you. I am lost and very, very hungry." The city fell into silence. No one knew what to do. Would they help the giant, or would they run? The people of Lumora stood frozen, their eyes locked on the towering figure before them. The giant's voice, though deep, had carried no threat, only hunger and uncertainty. But fear is a powerful thing. Suddenly, someone screamed, "A giant! He'll crush us all!" Panic spread through the crowd like wildfire. People grabbed their children and ran into their homes, slamming doors and locking windows. Shopkeepers abandoned their stalls, leaving fruits and bread scattered on the cobblestone streets. The guards, armed with spears and shields, rushed to the city gates, forming a shaky line between the giant and the terrified citizens. The giant sighed, his broad shoulders slumping. He had expected this reaction. It always happened whenever he approached a town. "I mean no harm," he said again, raising his massive hands to show he carried no weapons. "I only seek food and shelter for the night." But the guards did not lower their weapons. "Leave at once, or we will be forced to defend our city," one of them shouted, though his voice quivered. The giant looked around, his enormous eyes scanning the frightened faces peeking out from behind shutters and alleyways. His stomach rumbled loudly, echoing through the streets. He hadn't eaten in days. Just then, a small voice called out, breaking the tense silence. "You don't look scary." The crowd gasped and turned. A young girl, no older than 8, stood at the front of the frightened crowd. She had curly brown hair and wore a simple blue dress. Her name was Lila, and unlike the others, she wasn't afraid. "Lila, get back," her mother whispered harshly, trying to pull her away. But Lila stepped forward. In her tiny hands, she held a piece of bread. She stretched her arms as high as she could, offering it to the giant. "You said you were hungry," she said. "Hey!" The giant's eyes widened. No one had ever offered him food before. Carefully, he knelt down, his massive fingers taking the small piece of bread from the girl's hands. To him, it was as tiny as a crumb, but he smiled warmly. "Thank you, little one," he said. He placed the bread on his tongue and savored the taste. It wasn't much, but it was more than just food. It was kindness. The crowd murmured amongst themselves. Could the giant truly be harmless? The mayor, an older man with a long white beard, stepped forward. He cleared his throat. "Why have you come here, giant?" The giant sighed. "I have been wandering for many days. Towns chase me away before I can even ask for help. I am tired. I am hungry. And I only seek kindness." The mayor stroked his beard thoughtfully. Lila looked up at him. "We can help him, can't we?" The mayor hesitated. The people were still fearful, but Lila's bravery had planted a seed of doubt in their fear. Finally, the mayor spoke. "We cannot let you inside the city, but we may offer you food and shelter just outside the walls for the night." The giant smiled. "That would be more kindness than I have received in a long time." As the guards cautiously lowered their weapons, the people of Lumora watched, their fear slowly being replaced with curiosity. But not everyone in the city was willing to welcome the giant. From the shadows of an alleyway, a pair of angry eyes watched the scene. Not everyone believed the giant's words, and some would do anything to drive him away. The city of Lumora was restless that night. The people couldn't stop talking about the giant who now sat outside their gates. Some were curious, others fearful, and a few were angry. Inside the grand hall, the mayor sat with his council, discussing what to do next. "He seems harmless," one elder said, stroking his long beard. "And he was grateful for the food we gave him." "But how can we trust him?" another council member argued. "What if he's only pretending to be kind? What if he's waiting for us to fall asleep so he can attack?" The mayor sighed, deep in thought. The giant had done nothing wrong, but fear had a strong grip on the city. "For now, we will watch him. If he proves to be a danger, we will ask him to leave." But not everyone was willing to wait. In the darkest corner of the city, a group of men gathered in secret. Their leader, a man named Garon, slammed his fist on the table. His face was twisted in anger. "The mayor is a fool," he hissed. "That beast is a threat. He will bring destruction upon us all." "But he hasn't done anything," one of the men said hesitantly. "He even thanked the little girl for the bread." "Bye! That was a trick," Garon snapped. "He's waiting for the right moment. We must get rid of him before it's too late." The men exchanged nervous glances. "But how?" one asked. "He's too big for us to fight." A sly grin spread across Garon's face. "We don't have to fight him. We just have to make him angry. Once he attacks, the whole city will turn against him. Then, the guards will have no choice but to drive him away, or worse." The men nodded. The plan was set. Outside the city gates, the giant sat quietly near a large oak tree, staring up at the stars. He felt warmth in his heart after the kindness of the little girl, Lila. Maybe this city would be different. Maybe, just maybe, he had found a place where he could rest. But as the night deepened, he heard something rustling in the bushes nearby. Then, thwack! A sharp rock struck his arm. The giant flinched and turned toward the darkness. Another rock flew through the air, hitting his shoulder. "Go away, monster!" a voice hissed from the shadows. Before he could respond, more rocks came flying at him. They weren't big enough to hurt him badly, but the message was clear. Someone wanted him gone. The giant's heart sank. He had done nothing wrong. Why did people always fear him? His hands clenched into fists. A deep anger stirred inside him. But then he took a deep breath. No, he wouldn't let anger control him. Instead of fighting back, he stood up and spoke in a calm but firm voice. "I have done nothing to harm you. I only wish for kindness." There was silence. The attackers had expected him to lash out. Instead, he turned his back and sat down again. In the shadows, Garon cursed under his breath. The giant hadn't fallen for his trap. But he wasn't done yet. By morning, He would make sure the whole city believed the giant was dangerous. The sun had barely risen when Garon put the next part of his plan into action. He stormed into the city square, his voice loud and full of urgency. "The giant attacked us in the night," he shouted. "He threw rocks at our walls. He means to destroy Lumora." The townspeople gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. The giant attacked. But he seemed so kind. I knew we couldn't trust him. Lila, the little girl who had given the giant bread, ran up to Garon. "That's not true," she cried. "He wouldn't do that." Garon sneered. "And how would you know, little girl?" "Because I saw him," Lila said, standing her ground. "He was sitting quietly all night. He didn't hurt anyone." The mayor and the city guards arrived, listening to both sides. The giant, still sitting outside the city walls, looked sad but calm. The mayor turned to Garon. "You say the giant attacked, but we see no damage on the walls." He narrowed his eyes. "Did anyone else witness this?" The people looked at one another. No one spoke. Then, one of Garon's own men stepped forward, hesitating. We threw the first stones," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "We wanted to make him angry so the city would fear him." Gasps filled the air. "You lied to us," the mayor said, his voice stern. Garon's face turned red with fury. "I did what was necessary. He's a giant. He doesn't belong here." The mayor shook his head. "It is not size that makes someone dangerous, it is their heart. And right now, I see more kindness in the giant than in you." Garon's plan had failed. The guards led him away, and the city turned to face the giant. Lila ran to him. "I'm sorry they treated you like that," she said softly. "Not all of us are afraid." The giant smiled gently. "Fear makes people do things they normally wouldn't. But kindness is stronger than fear." The mayor stepped forward. "If you still wish to stay, we would be honored to have you as a friend of Lumora." The giant's eyes brightened. "I would like that." And so, the people of Lumora, once afraid, learned to accept the giant. He helped them in ways no one else could, lifting heavy stones for builders, reaching the tallest trees for harvesters, and even entertaining the children with stories of the lands he had seen. He was no longer just a giant. He was part of Lumora. Moral lesson: fear can turn people against what they do not understand. But kindness and patience can break even the strongest walls of fear. If we take the time to listen and see the truth, we may find friends where we once saw enemies.